for an audit. He did not stop their swearing in because there was no fraud. And he did not ask for an audit because we had a fair election. I will end with this. My friend Roy Blunt, my fellow Rules Committee leader, many years ago found a statue, a bust of a man at the top of a bookcase. He did research, he went to the historians, and all he could find out was that no one knew who this guy was, except that he was a cleric. Hence the statue is called the Unknown Cleric. Now, at the time, our leaders thought this man important enough that they would warrant a statue for him. But today, no one knows who he is. Senator Blunt's message to school kids and senators alike that visit his office when he shows them the statue, what we do here is more important than who we are. Senators, what matters is not our futures, not our own short-term destinies. What matters is our democracy's destiny. Because I think many of us know that people will not know who we are 100 years from now or 200 years from now. But what they will know is this. They will know what we did today, how we voted today, and that is more important than who we are. It's a republic if we can keep it. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Majority Leader.
I yield up to 5 minutes to the senator from Pennsylvania, Senator Toomey.
Senator from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I intend later to address the specifics of Pennsylvania if and when an objection is raised with regard to Pennsylvania. For now, I want to address my remarks to what I think is the fundamental question being posed by the objectors. And that is, does Congress have the constitutional authority to decide which states' electoral college votes should be counted and which should not, based on how well we think they ran their elections? This is what the objectors are really asking us to do, to federalize elections by rejecting electoral college votes from states whose processes they say they disapprove of, and thereby having Congress select the President of the United States instead of the American people. The answer, Mr. President, is no. There is no such authority under the Constitution. The Constitution assigns to the states the responsibility to conduct elections. It's clear in Article 2, Section 1. It leaves courts with the responsibility to adjudicate disputes, and it assigns to Congress the ministerial function of counting ballots, except for extreme circumstances, such as when a state sends competing slates of electors to Congress. Which brings me to the 1877 precedent. Some objectors claim to merely want a commission to conduct an audit and then let states decide whether to send different electors. Well, first, the situations are not at all analogous. In 1877, Congress had before it 2 slates of electors from several states. Here, there are no Trump electors from swing states. There's just Biden electors. Second, legislatures from the swing states, they've already spoken. They've made their decision. They've chosen not to send us alternative electors. Third, a commission? Really? It's completely impractical, and we all know it, with 14 days to go before a constitutionally mandated inauguration. But look at it this way. If the objectors are right, and it really is Congress's job to sit in judgment on the worthiness of the state's electoral processes, then what's the criteria for acceptable election processes? What investigations have been conducted of these processes? What body has deemed that certain states' processes are unacceptable? What opportunities were these states given to challenge the findings? Why are the objectors objecting only to swing states that President Trump lost? What about the ones he won? I don't know, North Carolina. What about California? They have ballot harvesting, I'm told. If this is all supposed to be Congress's job, you'd think we'd have answers to these questions and procedures in place, because we would have done this every 4 years, right? But we don't, because it's not our job. If we adopt this new precedent that we sit in judgment of states' processes, then we're federalizing the election law. We would necessarily have to establish the permissible criteria and rules for the state's elections. The ballot harvesting example, it's illegal in some states. It's encouraged in others. Does it become mandatory or forbidden depending on who's in control of Congress? And as the leader pointed out, it would be the end of the Electoral College. And the Electoral College is the mechanism by which the people select the president. But if Congress gets to decide which states get to vote in the Electoral College, then clearly Congress is selecting the president, not the people. Whichever party controls both houses of Congress would control the presidency. The public would never tolerate Congress picking the president instead of themselves, so they'd abolish the Electoral College, as many of our colleagues would like to do. And the end of the Electoral College, of course, means the nation will be governed by a handful of big blue states and regions that can drum up very large numbers. Mr. President, the Constitution does not assign to Congress the responsibility to judge the worthiness of state election processes, nor its adherence to its rules. That's the responsibility of the states and the courts. Let me conclude with this. I voted for President Trump. I publicly endorsed President Trump. I campaigned for President Trump. I did not want Joe Biden to win this election. But there's something more important to me than having my preferred candidate sworn in as the next president. And that's to have the American people's chosen candidate sworn in as the next president. A fundamental defining feature of a democratic republic is the right of the people to elect their own leaders. It's now our duty, it's our responsibility to ensure that that right is respected in this election and preserved for future elections. I urge you, vote against this objection.
All right, we're going to continue to monitor this, but I want to go up to Manu Raju up on Capitol Hill right now. Manu, I understand protesters they're getting assertive. What's the latest right now?
Yeah, there's a tense situation outside with protesters, many of whom were listening to President Trump's speech from this morning near the White House, and they marched down to Capitol Hill. Right outside the Capitol, there are scores of protesters outside this building right now, and we have been told by Capitol Police that the Capitol is in lockdown and that people cannot leave the building. Our colleague Ted Barrett just tried to leave the Capitol building. The officers have said the building's in lockdown. He and others, we've been ordered to stay in our offices, so we cannot leave the building. Now, we've been told that there have been some of the protesters have breached the security perimeter. There are barricades around the building, and some protesters apparently have breached that perimeter, which has led to this escalating situation with police. Now, this comes in the aftermath of the Cannon office building, which is in the House side of the Capitol, in the southeast of the Capitol, which has just been evacuated. The staff members and people who are working in that building were asked to leave the building, go into the tunnels between the two office buildings in the House side. Also, the James Madison building, which is part of the Library of Congress, was also asked to be evacuated. Now, the Capitol Police was investigating what they considered a suspicious package on the Cannon building. That has now been cleared, so people, staff members and the like, can return to their offices in the Cannon building. But the United States Capitol building, which of course is where you're seeing the debate happening in the Senate right now, and also on the House side, the building itself is in lockdown. So reporters, staff members, and others are not allowed to leave the building at the moment because of what is considered to be a pretty tense situation with supporters, many Trump supporters, who are protesting what is happening here in the building.
These are basically all pro-Trump supporters who have gathered in these huge numbers, walking over from the area near the White House up to Capitol Hill. And we see these huge crowds up there. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's what it is. When just looking outside the building, I can see scores and scores of protesters on the lawn of the Capitol, and the police had been prepared for this. They had been prepared for many days. There usually are barricades around the Capitol, but there have been more barricades to extend the perimeter around this building, given that many lawmakers come and they park their cars in the lot just outside the Capitol grounds. But they had extended that perimeter, but it appears, according to what we have been told, that some of these protesters have breached that perimeter, and that's led to back and forth, a tense situation with the police. Now, we're still trying to gather more information about what exactly is going on, but at the moment, Wolf, amid this very tense, bitter, and divisive debate on Capitol Hill, a tense situation outside, leading to an unusual situation here in the Capitol, where people like ourselves have been told we can't leave because this building is in lockdown for safety.
Cosmano, I see we've got this huge crowd right in front of where the inauguration on January 20th is going to be taking place. They've gathered very, very close. You can see the construction for the inauguration of Joe Biden as President of the United States, Kamala Harris as Vice President of the United States. But right in front, where normally there would be a big crowd waiting to watch, they've gathered, mostly not wearing masks, no social distancing. They're just moving closer and closer to Capitol Hill.
Yeah, and it's actually on both sides of the Capitol. You're looking at the west front of the Capitol, but there's also on the east front of the Capitol, which is really the cause of concern for the police officers, because that is typically the side in which House members, senators, and others who work in this building enter from from the east side of the Capitol, and that's where the barricades have been placed to essentially push these demonstrators towards the grassy area that in between the Capitol and the Supreme Court building. But that area on the east side of the Capitol is the one that is a cause of concern. And the buildings that have been evacuated earlier on the southeast side of the Capitol, which is the House office buildings where members of Congress, members of the House, their staff work, where they work, that had initially been the source of concern. But there appears to be multiple concerns here as this protest, this demonstration outside gets more and more tense as Capitol police officers are taking precautions and telling people in the building, in the Capitol building, don't leave because of the concerns about the security here.
We know U.S. Capitol Police, they're in charge over there, but the D.C. Mayor, Muriel Bowser, she did ask the D.C. National Guard to be activated in anticipation, potentially, of some violence emerging yesterday and today, for that matter. Do you see members of the D.C. National Guard up on Capitol Hill right now?
I don't see them, Wolf, because I'm inside the building. I've seen many Capitol Police. It's very possible there are D.C. National Guard and others helping with the situation outside. But, you know, this is a building that is heavily fortified. And initially, there are lots of police officers at every exit and every door. There are more today because of the expectation of this huge rally. And let's not forget that President Trump has repeatedly promoted this rally. He said, January 6th, I will see you there. He's told his supporters that this is the opportunity to overturn the election when we know that is simply not going to happen. Simply, there's just too many people who oppose taking such an unprecedented action to defy the Constitution and essentially have Congress hand him the victory here. But he has told his supporters something else, that this is the time where they can win, and he's revved them up, and many of them are outside. They're angry. They want Congress to act, and it's not going the way that they expect. So we expect this to play out all day today. We'll see how long the demonstrations last, if it goes through the day to the night, because we expect the proceedings on Capitol Hill to go up until the early morning hours. We'll see if the demonstrations last that long as well.
I noticed that the Republican leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy, just issued a statement calling on the protesters to engage in peaceful demonstrations. Clearly, there's a lot of concern, not just from the Democratic leadership, but the Republican leadership as well.
Yeah, no question about it, because a lot of these House members, it's their office buildings where a lot of them gather, where their staff work, where their staff are right now and are concerned about their safety. That's where a lot of the demonstration is at the moment. There are, as I said, on the east side of the Capitol, the southeast side of the Capitol, that's where the House buildings are, and we're seeing a lot of protesters gathered around there. So Kevin McCarthy making that statement important. It'll be important also for the president also to urge his his demonstrators to engage in civil discourse outside. So uncertain what will happen, Wolf, but clearly Capitol Police recognize how serious of a situation this is and doing everything they can to keep things tense and peaceful. Wolf.
You've covered Capitol Hill, Manu, for a long time. How unusual is this, what we're seeing unfold right now?
It's pretty unusual. Now, we have seen many protests over the years. Some get more tense than others. Some get violent, but typically not like this. We have not, from my time covering this building, I really can only remember maybe once or twice being in lockdown in a situation like this. And I've been covering Capitol Hill for almost 20 years now. So it's been it's very rare to be told you can't leave the building. So that's unusual, but you know, it's unclear exactly what is happening outside that has prompted this, other than the fact that we have heard that some protesters have breached the perimeter. We're not certain what else beyond that at the moment, but to be told not to leave is unusual. It just shows the precautions that everybody's taken, given that all 535 members of Congress are inside, the Vice President of the United States is inside, and other staff members and others here during this critical moment in which Joe Biden's victory will be official.
All right, I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, right now.
Yeah.
The president spoke just a little while ago. He seemed to be encouraging these protesters to get out there on the streets and make their voices heard. Now, peaceful protesting is good, but if there's violence, not good, Jim.
No, that's absolutely right, Wolf. And this is what the president said just a short time ago during those remarks down on the National Mall. when he was talking about how he wanted to overturn the results of the election. He said, we're going to try and give our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any of our help. We are going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. The president indicated a couple of times during his remarks earlier today that he was going to go down to the Capitol. We've been sort of waved off of that by the White House. But at this point, Wolf, we have not heard anything from President Trump telling these protesters to stand back and stand by, to use a phrase he used during those presidential debates when talking about the Proud Boys. Wolf, this is a president who has been egging on his supporters for weeks now. We heard him earlier today down on the ellipse by the White House, by the National Mall, once again saying that these results from the election should be thrown out, that Mike Pence, his vice president, should be a part of that kind of attempted coup up on Capitol Hill. The vice president has said he's not going to do that, Wolf, and it's worth reminding people, we were here on June 1st when there were protests outside the grounds of the White House when the Trump administration used tear gas and pummeled protesters to bring calm to that situation.
Jim,
over there,
hold on for one moment. Hold on for a moment, Jim.
The president's not doing that kind of thing today.
Alexander Marquardt is there right in the middle of all of this. He's joining us on the phone right now. So, Alex, explain what you're seeing and what you're hearing. How worried are the folks where you are?
Well, they're not worried. In fact, Wolf, they are certainly energized. We're on the western side of the Capitol, right where the inauguration is going to take place in 2 weeks. And there's been a significant escalation in just the last few moments. The protesters had been relatively peaceful and held at bay by a police line. In the last few minutes, they have broken through that police line. I am watching as we speak throngs of protesters climbing the steps on the western side of the Capitol. They have reached up onto the terrace of the Capitol. I can see at least half a dozen protesters scaling, literally climbing the walls of the Capitol to get up to where their fellow protesters are. In response, the police have fired tear gas. We've had several rounds of tear gas that have had protesters choking and their eyes streaming. Wolf, it is hard to say what the police presence is out here. I cannot see any sort of law enforcement. Right now, everything I'm seeing is protesters getting onto the grounds of the Capitol with very little pushback from law enforcement. Wolf?
Yeah, and we anticipated something like this could happen. That's why the mayor of Washington, D.C. asked that the D.C. National Guard be activated. But what I hear you saying, Alex, is you don't see Capitol Police, you don't see military, National Guard on the scene right now, but you see a lot of protesters going through, breaching Capitol Hill steps, getting to areas where clearly they're breaking the law. Do they understand they potentially could be arrested, sent to jail for what they're doing?
I assume they certainly do, but that they don't care at all. There had been law enforcement, including what I imagine to be park police up there. They are no longer here. There are different movements, it seems, within this group of protesters. There had been some who wanted to protest peacefully, who were asking others to leave this side of the Capitol to go to another side to carry out a peaceful protest. But in just the past few moments, there has been a lot of momentum within this protest, with people calling for their fellow protesters and activists to essentially storm the Capitol, to get up those steps. And right now, Wolf, what I'm looking at are scores of protesters up on the terrace of the Capitol, where this inauguration is going to take place, holding all sorts of flags, Trump flags, American flags, don't tread on me flags. The people that I'm looking at here appear to feel like they do have the upper hand, and I'm not seeing any sort of sign of law enforcement right now from where I am, Wolf.
Well, that's not good at all. Stand by. Phil Mattingly is up on Capitol Hill. You're watching what's going on. Phil, you've covered Capitol Hill for a long time. What are you seeing?
Yeah, Wolf, I think let's start from the basics of what the Capitol Police were trying to do going into this day and what they do for most big events. They set up a security perimeter of fences about 100, 150 feet away from the actual building itself. The general public is not allowed in there. You're not allowed through there unless you have a pass. Those barricades have been completely busted through at this point. There's thousands of people now that have gone through those barricades. The Capitol Police, based on where I am across the street, watching this transpire, the Capitol Police have basically backed off closer into the building to try and circle a perimeter of the Capitol building itself. The bigger issue right now, it would appear, is the number of protesters, and they are clearly in the hundreds, who have now climbed up the steps of the Capitol building. This is an area that general public is never allowed on, even in normal days, certainly not a day like today. So they've essentially overtaken the front of the Capitol, and not just hundreds of people having climbed onto the Capitol building and up the steps of the Capitol building itself, the center steps of the Capitol, but also thousands more on the ground waiting there. So the word we've gotten right now is essentially from Capitol Police, the Capitol building itself is shut down. It's locked down. Nobody's leaving the building. But I think the bigger question right now is this is an overwhelming number of people for the Capitol Police and for what they're prepared for. And, Wolf, you know this as well as anybody. There's been no shortage of huge events and very large protests in Washington, D.C. that come around the Capitol, that are near the Capitol, that are focused on the Capitol. And I've just simply never seen anything like this, not just the breaching of the barricades, but the actual climbing onto the Capitol building in the pavilion itself. They are not physically inside the building, but they are standing right at the doors from the center steps to get into the building right now. So obviously a lot of concern internally between Capitol Police, between staff around here, in terms of what's going to happen next and what the actual goals are, Wolf.
Yeah, I've covered a lot of huge demonstrations in Washington, D.C., especially around Capitol Hill. I haven't seen anything like this. John King, you've covered a lot of these as well. This is pretty dangerous when you see these protesters going through a barricade, getting inside this area, and you got the Vice President of the United States, you got the leadership in the House and the Senate. They're debating these articles right now, and all of a sudden, we see this going on.
It's a scary scene, plain and simple. It is a scary scene, and every American has the right to protest, even if what they're protesting is a fantasy, meaning that the President of the United States won the election. He did not. But as Phil was noting and Manu was noting, the President of the United States, encouraged these protesters and at one point said he might go with them. He has said that before and not actually shown up for the demonstrations. But, Wolf, there's a line, and it's not a fine line. There's a clear line between activism and anarchy. They are on federal property. The United States Congress is meeting inside those doors. They have every right to be around the grounds and to demonstrate and to make their voices heard, but scaling the stairs, going past the barricades, you're right. They are now trespassing. And to Phil's point, the Capitol Police, there's simply not enough of them. They do not anticipate moments like this. They would have help from the Metropolitan Police, from federal authorities for big events like the inauguration at the Capitol, for the State of the Union at the Capitol. Clearly, they did not anticipate this materializing at the scale it is right now. And so what have they done? The Capitol Police have pulled back and essentially, battened the hatches there and to protect the members of Congress inside. It's quite remarkable if you think about the power center of the United States government that is inside that building, the Vice President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, the future Vice President of the United States, the House of Representatives, the United States Senate, all inside there. And again, these are supporters of the president. He lost the election. They have every right to be mad and upset about that, but they do not have the right to trespass on federal property and to have threats. Now, there's often conflicting information in situations like this, but Congresswoman Elaine Luria of Virginia, a Democrat, tweeted a short time ago, "I just had to evacuate my office because of a pipe bomb reported outside. Supporters of the president are trying to force their way into the Capitol, and I can hear what sounds like multiple gunshots." Now, again, I want to be clear, when you have a chaotic situation like this, there's often conflicting information about what actually happened. We'll explore whether there are such threats, but clearly, members of Congress are among those who feel unsafe right now.
All right, let's go to Manu Raju right now. He's getting more information. Manu, what are you learning?
Now, we have been told, and there have been spotted, protesters are inside the Capitol building. There are scores of protesters, we're told. I'm not sure exactly how many, but there have been witnessed. They're outside the Senate, just off the Senate floor, on the second floor of the Capitol. Now, there's just an alert that just went out to all congressional staff, as well as everybody in the Capitol building, urging people to move inside their office, their nearest office, telling them to take emergency equipment with them, stay away from external doors and windows. It says if you're in a public space, find a place to hide or seek cover, remain quiet, silence electronics. It said once you're in a safe location, make sure you tell your superiors about that. It said no one will be permitted to enter or exit the Capitol building until directed by the U.S. Capitol Police. This alert also says if you are in a building outside of the affected area, remain clear of the police activity and await further direction. Wolf, this is something I have never seen in my time covering Capitol Hill, that protesters have actually breached not just the building, but have come inside the building, and just steps from where U.S. senators have been debating on the Senate floor. From the pictures that we're seeing, that there are actually protesters just off the Senate floor, on the second floor of the United States Capitol. So clearly the police
Hold
are
on
trying
a
to get a
second,
hold of
Manu,
the
because
situation.
I know Brian Todd is at this area where we see police now showing up. What are you seeing, Brian?
Right, Wolf, you just saw a large number of police officers, as you see on the steps there. They have now taken the steps where some protesters are on these steps that you're seeing. And I'm going to have our photojournalist Christine pan over there. All right, we just heard a concussive blast come from there. We've been hearing flashbangs every few minutes for the last hour, both on this side, this is the east side of the Capitol, and on the west side of the Capitol. On the west side, it's also very, very tense because we saw people there climbing up on risers that were built for the inauguration and breaching police lines there. You can clearly see where they breached the police line here. They got all the way up the steps, they got to the balcony up there, but police have just come from the Independence Avenue side behind us here and have started to enter the plaza. Now, the question is, how long are they going to let these people stay up there and do what they're doing? You know, it is an incredible scene. I've heard you and Manu and John talking about. We've never seen anything like this before. We've never seen a breach where protesters have gotten that close to the building. And I can tell you on the west side of the Capitol, Wolf, it was very, very tense as well. The crowd is bigger on the west side because they were able to kind of receive people in that open space there from the ellipse. But there were a lot of concussive blasts, a lot of flashbangs, a lot of tension there, and lines were breached there as well. So the real question, as we see this kind of tension boiling here, is, you know, are there going to be massive police reinforcements coming, and how long they're going to let this go on, Wolf?
Yeah, it looks really dangerous, and especially if, Manu, if you're still there, you said some of these protesters actually got inside Capitol Hill. Normally you have to go through metal detectors. Police are examining you. Did they just rush through? And do we know if these individuals are armed?
Good question, Wolf. Uncertain about that, but the fact that they got in suggests they did not go through the security. Remember, this building has been closed off to visitors since the pandemic began, so only people who have credentials, like reporters, staff members, and people who work in the Capitol building, and the members of Congress themselves, they're the only ones who are allowed in this building. The fact that we have many protesters who are now inside the building suggests that they breached the security, that the police officers that are guarding the exit, somehow they got in, got past the security, the magnetometers that inspect whether people are bringing, you know, firearms or other weapons inside the building. So somehow they got into the building, and from the pictures that we have seen, Wolf, they are in the Senate. They are on the second floor of the Senate. This is exactly where the Senate debate was just happening, just steps from that, Wolf. And we're told also that the Capitol Police have instructed the lawmakers themselves that the whole building is in lockdown to stay where they are. So both chambers are now in recess. They have paused the certification of the electoral votes. They are sitting in their chambers as this situation, unprecedented situation, escalates. Protesters inside the building somehow have gotten in, creating a very tense and scary situation in which staff members, others, have been told to go into their offices, stay in their offices, lock their doors because they don't know who's in the building, what they have, whether people have weapons, because of concerns that this is going to escalate even further out of control, Wolf.
Yeah, this is looking at inside. Look at this. These protesters are inside Statuary Hall right now. You see the statues. This is a moment I never saw in my life. These individuals just rushed through security. They are inside Statuary Hall. This is a legendary place where all of us who've covered Capitol Hill, it's hard to believe what we're seeing right there. They're just walking through. Where are Capitol Police? It's an awful situation. They're having a good time in Statuary Hall. Jake Tapper, I don't know about you, but this is an incredibly dangerous situation that's unfolding here in the United States.
It's stunning, Wolf. It's absolutely stunning, and it's quite frankly dangerous. President Trump could stop this with one tweet, but instead he's on Twitter attacking Vice President Pence for refusing to go along with his attempt at a coup, at a bloodless coup. We hope it stays bloodless. And you have protesters accosting senators. You have people, members of Congress, being evacuated because of bomb threats. You have protesters right outside the Senate chamber. It is a very potentially dangerous situation. I've been in Washington for decades now. I've never seen anything like this. And again, President Trump, if he wanted to, and there is really no reason to think he wants to, he could stop this. He could stop it with one tweet, and he will not because, frankly, he likes this.
By not discouraging what we are seeing, the president is encouraging what we are seeing. Just as he has in a much more over way, over and over and over again with his tweets. Completely irresponsible, and this is the result of that. Unfortunately, as unusual and as terrifying and as surprising as what we are seeing is going on, in a lot of ways, it is one of the least surprising things. What is remarkable is that this kind of thing hasn't happened earlier because that these protesters, who of course have the right to protest, but this is beyond that. As John said, this is basically taking over, storming the Capitol. It's anarchy. It really is anarchy. And the president has encouraged this time and time again, and they are stopping the constitutional, peaceful transfer of power.
I want to bring in Pamela Brown, who has some more breaking news about the security issues at the United States Capitol, which has now been stormed by hundreds of Trump supporters who have been fed the lie for months by the president and others that the election was fraudulent. It was not. But they are angry, they are upset, and now there is a very real risk of violence. Pamela?
Absolutely. I've spoken to several sources, Jake, who tell me that the situation is getting out of control, that it has turned insane, frankly, and that the other law enforcement has been asked to help by Capitol Police. They have been reaching out to federal authorities and local authorities, asking them to come help. I'm told by a local law enforcement source that the MPD's Civil Disturbance Unit personnel, they have been deployed there to the Capitol building to help. Other federal authorities have been called to help. And another issue they're dealing with are there are several suspicious packages around the building, I'm told, that the Capitol Police are looking at. They are examining these suspicious packages. We know, we've already reported that we have heard flashbangs there. I'm also told from a source on the ground that pepper spray has been deployed and so forth. So there are multiple security situations going on as we are seeing this unfold there in real time, this remarkable, unprecedented situation at the Capitol building.
The definition of sedition is to try to overturn the rule of law through force, and that is what we are witnessing. Trump supporters who have been lied to by Trump and his minions, individuals like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, lied to by MAGA media, have been incensed and outraged, and they are now resorting to physically trying to storm the Capitol to stop the constitutional process of electors being counted for the person who won the election, Joe Biden, the president-elect. That is what's going on. That is what we are witnessing. And there are a lot of people who are complicit in this. It will not succeed. Joe Biden will be sworn in on January 20th. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, if you're Josh Hawley or Ted Cruz or Matt Gaetz or either of the Murdochs, you have to ask yourself, what am I doing? What am I creating here? What have I unleashed? This is the United States of America, and we're watching protesters try to undermine the course of an election, a constitutional process, through force by storming the United States Capitol.
Look at that. That is outside. Jake, I'm sorry to interrupt, but look at those pictures. Have you ever seen anything like that? I mean, these are protesters outside on the steps of the Capitol. They're physically in there.
Well, it's a fitting end to an era that has been characterized by lawlessness. That President Trump, the reason this is happening is because President Trump wanted Vice President Pence to act in a lawless way in his procedural duties today, and now his supporters in their anger, are basically breaking into the Capitol, forcing members of Congress to go into hiding because they've been, as you said, Jake, fed lies.
I apologize for interrupting, Abby. I just want to say the mayor of Washington, D.C., Mayor Muriel Bowser, is now ordering a 6 p.m. curfew in Washington, D.C. because of these protests, which have turned violent. Individuals who have been fed lies, as you noted, now storming the Capitol to try to stop the constitutional process. Please continue.
And just to be clear, President Trump has tweeted in the last few minutes, but he has said nothing to disavow this,
no,
to
he's
tone
throwing
down
fuel on the fire.
violence. Exactly. In fact, he has been upping the rhetoric against Mike Pence, and that is it's beyond irresponsible. He has a responsibility. These are his supporters. They're carrying Trump flags. So he could say to them, stop, back away, don't do this, and he won't do it.
We are watching an attempted sedition. We are watching an attempt at a bloodless coup in the United States. Trump supporters stopping the constitutional process, the counting of electors. The mayor has invoked a 6 p.m. curfew. More police reinforcements are coming to Capitol Hill. Let's go now to Brian Todd, who is on the scene. Brian, where are you and what are you seeing?
Jake, we're on the east side of the Capitol, the east front, the east steps, and you see that huge group of protesters on the steps. You can also see some Capitol Hill police on the balcony to the side. They don't appear to have the numbers to deal with this right now, but they're donning riot gear. We saw some smoke deployed earlier, not sure exactly how that started, but you can see there are some Capitol Hill police up there, probably awaiting orders on what to do, and we are told that there are reinforcements coming from different law enforcement up here, but they are not here yet, I can tell you that. There was a group of D.C. police, at 20 or so, that showed up here a short time ago, went around the side of the building, and we believe went inside, but we're not sure. But clearly, as far as the police that we're seeing up there on that balcony, they are not moving. They're observing right now. They've donned some riot gear, and they have not moved yet to move these protesters off the steps. Let's have Christine, our photojournalist, pan. Well, you got some cheers going up here. I was going to show you another set of steps, but let's see what's happening here. Not sure what started the cheering, but clearly it's, this has gotten out of hand. These protesters got up the steps. They breached the barricades, more than an hour ago. Got up the steps, some of them got inside. And we did see a large group of Metropolitan Washington police go inside the building, we believe. So they may be trying to deal with that from the inside first before they move out here. But they have not shown up in huge numbers at this plaza yet. We also know that on the west side of the Capitol, it's very, very tense with a lot of flashbangs going on. Protesters breached the barricades there. Some of them climbed up on these risers that were set up for the inauguration. And we are just waiting to see when law enforcement shows up and in what kind of numbers, because right now, I can tell you, they don't have the numbers here to deal with this crowd.
All right, Alex Marquardt is also on the scene, and I'm getting texts, as I'm sure Dana and Abby are as well, from members of Congress, Trump supporters, Biden supporters, Democrats, Republicans, who are stunned. They have been told by Capitol Police they have to shelter in place in their office. Is it because of a terrorist attack on the United States? It's because Trump supporters are violently, in some cases, forcing themselves into the United States Capitol, stopping the constitutional proceedings of the counting of the electoral votes for Joe Biden, the president-elect. Alex Marquardt, where are you and what are you seeing?
Jay, we're still on the western side of the Capitol. It is hard. How surreal it is. The wall of the Capitol.
All right, Alex, your phone's going in and out. We're going to check back with you when your connection's better. Let's go to Manu Raju, who I think is inside the Capitol building. Manu, where are you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, Jake, we are been told to ordered to stay inside our offices, not to allowed to leave because of protesters now storming both the House and the Senate. They are inside the building, an unprecedented situation, something that lawmakers are stunned themselves to see. And we're getting word about how some of this was communicated to lawmakers while the debate was happening over the certification of the electoral votes in the House chamber. According to pool reports that just came into us moments ago, the officer told lawmakers, House members, that they may need to duck under their chairs. He said that protesters, we now have, this was what the officer said, we now have individuals that have breached the Capitol building. They are in the rotunda area. Now the rotunda is of course the big dome that separates the House and the Senate, and inside that is just feet away from both chambers. There were many protesters there, in which that's what prompted the Capitol Police to warn lawmakers to cover themselves. They said at that point there was no threat to the chamber, but seeing the pictures that are coming in, Jake and Wolf, there are so many protesters that are just feet away from where House members are and where they have been told to essentially lock down inside the chamber themselves. If there's concern about some of these protesters getting onto the House floor, these House lawmakers have been told to go into the cloakrooms. Those cloakrooms are where the actual members from each side gather. They meet. They have when they go off of the House floor. So they're urging them to take cover there if necessary. The Senate side of the Capitol also concerns because there are many protesters around the Senate floor right now, and that's why the proceedings on the Senate have gone into recess as well, and senators are sitting inside the chamber themselves. Nobody's allowed to go in. The reporters aren't allowed to go and see what's happening. But at the moment, a very, very tense situation when police here clearly have been overrun by these protesters who have stormed the building, stormed the barricades, have walked past the security, and are now all over this building right now. The question is, how long does it last? But at the moment, people are being told, stay inside, stay safe, make very little noise, don't draw attention to yourself, because they're not sure who these individuals are, what they possess, if they have any firearms, or what their intentions are at the moment as they struggle to get the situation under control.
It is an absolutely shameful, disgusting situation that we are witnessing here, but eminently predictable, with the outgoing president of the United States refusing to accept reality, refusing to concede defeat, attacking every single Republican who gets in his way, including his own vice president. Pamela Brown, tell us more about the security situation on Capitol Hill.
Well, I can tell you right now, Jake, there are discussions about evacuating the Vice President Pence, given how unwieldy the situation and potentially dangerous the situation has become. It's unclear right now as to whether Pence has officially been evacuated from the building. But what I can tell you is that at the very least, Jake, there are discussions ongoing as we speak about getting him out of there. And if it hasn't already happened yet, it very well could soon. That's where we are. Of course, Pence is the presiding officer there today over the certification, the electoral count. And clearly, this was not how officials planned for this to go, for the vice president to potentially be evacuated from the building. Of course, it's worth noting this is all happening as the White House has not commented. The president has not commented or said anything directly about the chaos that's going on at the White House.
Well, he did just tweet something. It's not a call to stand down. And let me go to Jim Acosta at the White House now to bring us news on that, because just a couple of minutes ago, Jim, the president, he did not say, please stop what you're doing, but he did issue a tweet, rather weak one, I might add.
It is rather flaccid, Jake, but the president has broken his silence, I suppose you could say, finally, on all of this, after this has been going on for over an hour. The president tweeting just a few moments ago, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful, with an exclamation mark. But as you said, Jake, he is not telling these protesters to leave the Capitol. And in fact, earlier this afternoon, when he was down on the National Mall, he was egging on these supporters to go down to the Capitol and make their voices heard. And of course, now They are storming the Capitol in a way that looks like open rebellion in Washington, D.C., with no potential to knock this down, it seems at this point. I was just talking with a Trump advisor a few moments ago who was just outraged over this and said, shame on POTUS for throwing gasoline on this fire and not doing anything to stop it. I will tell you, Jake, just a few moments ago, we saw that Marine stationed outside the West Wing. That's usually an indication that the president is in the Oval Office. You can almost take it to the bank, Jake, that the president of the United States is watching all of this unfold, watching what he egged on unfold, and is essentially watching the world burn just 2 weeks before he leaves office. This is the kind of situation, Jake, where the president should be going into the briefing room. You know this all too well as a former White House correspondent yourself. He should be going into the briefing room and telling these protesters to stop and go home. He is not doing that. That makes him responsible for what's happening right before our eyes right now, Jake.
Absolutely, Jim. I mean, when that Trump advisor you spoke to said that the shame on POTUS for pouring fuel on the fire, I mean, President Trump has been spilling fuel like the Exxon Valdez. I mean, this is not like some new development. He created this mess.
This is a bonfire of the insanities that we're watching in the nation's capital right now, and it all flows from Trump. He has been lighting these matches for weeks now. He was lighting these matches down on the National Mall earlier today, telling people to go down to the Capitol, telling them at one point, I mean, misleading them into thinking that he was going to join them down on the Capitol. So it was essentially an invitation to join the President of the United States down at the Capitol to give these lawmakers a piece of their minds. And now this is what we're left with. This is the ugly aftermath of what we're left with. And Jake, what is the plan to get these people out of there? My goodness, on June the 1st, the president sent federal law enforcement forces, National Guard, they tear gas, they pummel people to get people out of Lafayette Park, get people away from the church so he can hold a Bible in front of the church. There appears to be no plan in place at this point to clear all of these capitals away, all of these protesters away from the Capitol. This is just bedlam on the streets of the nation's capital. This is Trump's rebellion.
It's absolutely, and it is the natural development of all of this. So many cowardly Republican congressmen in that building trying to appease the president and his angry base by rebelling and committing an attempted act of sedition. And here is the physical manifestation of it. Maharaja, you have some news.
Yeah, it seems to be very, very tense and very serious outside the House floor. There's a report that is coming from the pool reporters who are on that side of the Capitol saying there is an armed standoff at the House front door. The police officers have their guns drawn at someone who is trying to reach the front door. They tried to reach the main doors, but there was a heavy barricade and police presence. But to repeat, according to the House pool reports that we're getting in right now, there's an armed standoff at the House front door. Police officers have their guns drawn at someone who is trying to reach the front door. Now, we're also told the House lawmakers who had been sheltering in place inside the House chamber while this was all unfolding as they were debating the election certification, they have been told to evacuate. They're being evacuated. That's what we've been told. We've also been told that Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States, who is presiding over the Senate chamber, he has also been evacuated. It's unclear where all the senators are at the moment, but a lot of the protesters, they're all over this building. They have breached the barricades. They've breached the security. There are many of them outside the House chamber. But at the moment, this serious situation of an armed standoff outside the House floor, we'll see. Hopefully this gets resolved peacefully, but police are overrun by these protesters that have asked for reinforcements to deal with this situation that is escalating and going out of control here, guys.
It sounds absolutely awful. Dan Abash, you just got some news from Congressman Jerry Connolly, Democrat of Virginia.
Yeah, just to add to what Manu was saying, he was reporting that the House members are being evacuated from the House chamber. One member, Jerry Connolly, says that they were given gas masks on the House floor. These are members of Congress. They're doing their constitutional duty to try to certify the next president of the United States given gas masks. And the reason is because tear gas was used in the rotunda. probably as a response to, I wouldn't even call them protesters, anarchists.
Let me bring in former police commissioner of the police force in both D.C. and Philadelphia, Charles Ramsey. Chief Ramsey, I guess the first question I have for you is how would one even try to get control of this situation so that the House and the Senate can resume their constitutional duty that has to happen today according to law?
Well, I mean, they're going to need to get reinforcements, no question about that. Start by clearing the outside, get the people outside away from the building, get that secured, and the ones inside, you got to force them out. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. You cannot allow this to continue. They're overwhelmed right now. There are MOUs that are in place with both the Metropolitan Police, the Park Police, the National Capital Region, agencies from both Virginia as well as Maryland. I don't know who they're calling. I'm trying to reach out now to get more information, but they need to bring in a lot more resources and get this thing settled down, get it cleared out. And it's time for them to just get people cleared out of there. It's not going to look pretty, but they got to get it done.
Well, they are telling members of Congress to shelter in place. They are evacuating members of the House and Senate from doing their constitutionally prescribed duties. There are fights. There are people breaching police lines. There are people climbing up walls. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I don't think anybody else has either. In fact, I know they haven't, not in the United States. I mean, maybe in some third world country. But, you know, here you got a situation where the president's stirring the pot. He's got his allies in there. They have unleashed something that they cannot control, and they need to understand that. Now, control can be regained, and again, I'm telling you now, it's not going to be pretty. And if I was there, I guarantee you, we would do whatever we had to do to get them the hell out of there. But, you know, it never should have gotten this far. Never should have gotten this far.
President Trump he tweeted a comment, not what I think you would want if you were the police chief right now. He wrote, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." It's odd that he said stay peaceful given the fact that this crowd is not peaceful. So there's no way that they could stay peaceful. They have already stormed the Capitol. What would you want President Trump to tweet right now to de-escalate
What I'd want the president to do is shut the hell up and get out of the way. I mean, the guy is he's like cancer. You know, how much more can you give me? You know, at some point in time, if he's not going to do the right thing and tell him to get the hell out of the Capitol and act like they've got some sense, then just shut up. He stirred him up. He got this whole thing going. This is as close to a coup attempt as this country has ever seen. That's what you're looking at, folks. That is what you're looking at. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And a lot of people are responsible for this.
Well, absolutely. This is sedition. We have been saying this now for weeks. This is sedition. This is attempting to undermine the rule of law through use of force.
They've done it.
And
they're not attempting. They have done it.
Right. 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 Is there any way President...
I mean, this is crazy.
Go ahead.
They've got to gain control. They got to gain control quickly or it's going to get worse. This is not even nightfall yet. And you still got to deal with that.
Right. You need to get them out. You need to get them out of there before night. Before night. That's an excellent observation.
Because it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse.
But why haven't they? I mean, we knew this day was coming. We knew that President Trump likes to stir the pot. That's how you put it. I would say he likes to create stochastic terrorism. He likes to demonize and incentivize bad actions. Right?
We knew the day was coming, but I don't think anybody could have anticipated that people would have gone this far to seriously overrun the United States Capitol. I just don't think, and I'm sure the Capitol Police had extra people on duty, went to 12-hour shifts, all days off canceled. You know, every department in that region has activated their emergency plans. But who could have anticipated this? I mean, I'm watching it, and it's like watching a bad B movie. I haven't seen anything like it. And if I seem a little upset, it's because I am. I mean, this is the United States of America. That's our United States Capitol.
No,
And,
I think we all feel this way.
To protect and defend it.
Well, I think we all feel that way. You might feel also something different because you were once the police chief of the Metropolitan Police Department here in D.C., and so this is in many ways, I would think, your worst nightmare and something that you worked very hard with all of your police officers to make sure never happened.
Exactly right. I mean, we had major demonstrations. If you remember back in the IMF World Bank days, I mean, we had major demonstrations in the city, and some of them got pretty close to losing it. But we never had anything even come close to coming this far. And again, they have to gain control. They take the gloves off and do what they got to do, but they got to get control and get that Capitol back.
The Capitol Police are asking for additional law enforcement assistance. I imagine that would be the Metropolitan Police Department. It would be the U.S. Secret Service, perhaps even the National Guard, U.S. Park Police, of course.
Park Police.
And
National
what would you
Guard.
do? How do you clear it out? Obviously, people have a right to peaceably protest. That's not what this is, because they have stormed the Capitol and stopped congressional action. I don't know that anything like this has happened since the days of the Vietnam War, frankly, when protesters for the Vietnam War used to go in there and block the halls of Congress to try to stop proceedings.
Yeah, they're going to have to really get enough resources there so they can start to move the crowd. And they're going to have to push. I don't know if they're going to use gas or not, but, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you do what you have to do to clear the Capitol.
And let me make clear.
You just can't have this.
Let me make clear, I'm not comparing what's going on here to Vietnam War protesters. Those people were trying to stop a war, and these people are trying to start one.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying, because we're both old enough to remember, those are protests that did get out of hand. They got very violent on both sides, both from law enforcement and from protesters. And so I haven't seen anything like it since then, obviously. But this is unprecedented, even for that era. It didn't go that far, even in that era.
No, and those were generally peaceful protesters, and storming the Capitol is not peaceful protest. Chief Ramsey, thanks so much. Stay there. We're going to come back to you. I want to go back to Manu Raju, who's in Capitol Hill. And Manu, I'm hearing from a lot of Democrats and Republican Congress people who are frankly disgusted, shocked, and some of them are even scared.
Yeah, a lot of people are scared, Jake, because this is an escalating, chaotic situation. Police do not have it under control. There is, we're told, an armed standoff outside the House floor. It's unclear exactly how that has been resolved at the moment. There are members inside the House chamber. It's been locked. Other members have been evacuated to various parts of the Capitol complex. Senators also have been evacuated as well, and many locking themselves in their offices, told not to leave. Now, we were also just told that the members who are in the House, they have been told that there is tear gas in the rotunda, and to push back against any of these protesters, there's tear gas, so potentially that could become an issue here as this situation develops. And they've been told that there are masks under their seats in the House chamber that they can certainly put on if they need to. So there's a lot of. There are members who have been told to go to shelter in place. Everybody has been told to shelter in place in this building. We have all been told we cannot leave this building because of the fact that there are protesters in all parts of the Capitol, on the House side and the Senate side, through all levels. There have been reports of violent clashes between protesters and demonstrators, protesters and police trying to arrest some of these demonstrators, seeing violent activity, violent interactions between the two sides, and just feet from where the House was just gathering to debate the certification of Joe Biden's election victory, that armed standoff occurring. Again, that is unclear how that is resolved, but they've been told there is tear gas that's ready to be deployed if necessary as this escalating situation continues here, Jake.
If you're just joining us, it is almost 3 o'clock, and normally the House and Senate would be counting the electoral votes for the president-elect, Joe Biden, in this case, but that has stopped. The proceedings have stopped because Trump supporters have stormed the U.S. Capitol. There are violent confrontations going on. Members of Congress have been told to shelter in place. Many members of Congress, Trump supporters and Biden supporters alike, are appalled and scared. And frankly, it is appalling and it is frightening. We are witnessing an attempt at sedition. We are witnessing an attempt at a forceful overthrow of the U.S. government, or at least of the proceedings, the U.S. constitutionally prescribed proceedings of the counting of electoral votes. Let's go to Brian Todd, who is there amidst the chaos. Brian, what are you witnessing?
Stand by here. Well, Jake, if you can see, our photojournalist Christine Leon is going to kind of zoom in to past this flag when they go by. You can see protesters standing on top of some government vehicles that are parked at the foot of the stairs here on the east side. Now, in the last couple of minutes, we have seen some protesters make their way down the stairs. They're taking their time going down, so they really do not believe they're being pushed away by any law enforcement. And Christine, if you can pan to your left there, you can see the Capitol Hill police on the left side of the balcony there. They've been standing there for several minutes, waiting for orders, seemingly. Some of them have donned riot gear, but they are right now observers to this situation. Now, again, the crowd, some of them have left the stairs, but they're still, clearly, as you can see, a lot of protesters on the stairs. We can also tell you that they have made their way up 3 sets of stairs here on the east side of the Capitol. 2 on either side of us, but not as dense as the crowd is not as dense on the other side, on the other stairways, as it is here. But these people clearly are emboldened. They don't feel any urgency to move. And the real question here, Jake, is when is law enforcement going to show up in force to try to get these people out? We do know that the mayor has instituted a curfew for 6 p.m., but that's a few hours from now. The question is, when are they going to show up to try to move some of these people out? They may be trying to address the situation inside the Capitol first before they move on these people, because we did see some Washington Metropolitan Police show up, about 20 of them, a short time ago, and they moved around to the side of the building, seemingly to try to go inside. So they may be inside dealing with the situation inside before they move outside and deal with this. But these people don't show any inclination at all to move. And right now, they're not being forced to move at all, Jake.
For months, the president and his supporters on Capitol Hill and MAGA media have been lying to the American people, lying to Trump supporters about election fraud that did not happen. Court after court ruled that there was no evidence of it. The states